And good evening, Australia. Welcome to the show. My name is Michael Kazilny. It's tough times. On the couch tonight, we've got a top bloke, a good guy who used to catch the bad blokes. 28 years in the Victoria Police Force. Once upon a time, the boss of the armed robbery squad of Victoria Police. Thank you, Ray Watson.
Michael, good to see you.
It's been a few years, mate. I think we had you on Cops and Lawyers back in 2004.
Oh, was that long ago? Yes, I remember it clearly. Yes,
but you're still looking young and fit.
I'm going all right.
Now, this gentleman, ladies and gentlemen, was one of the tough blokes in the Victoria Police. I don't need to be judgmental, but there's a lot of a bit of a soft touch there now. You know, the police service. But this man has watched. He's interrogated. He's arrested and shot violent armed criminals. Now, where did the passion come from, Ray, to join the police force initially?
Oh, okay. Look, it really happened. I was living overseas in South America and the United States for a few years, and I had a lot of contact, especially in the United States, with some policemen. And my employer in San Francisco was an ex-San Francisco sergeant, and he used to talk to me about the police force and what he used to do, and it excited my interest greatly. And so much so that after a while I returned to Melbourne and immediately joined the police force with one goal, and that was to become a detective. That's really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to direct traffic or...
Good on you. Goals are important, aren't they?
Ride motorbikes. I just really wanted to be a detective from day one, and it couldn't happen quick enough.
And then between 1986 and 2000, you were in the armed robbery squad.
I was. With the one stint, I had a stint for 12 months. I was the officer in charge of Moonee Ponds Police Station when I was promoted. But I was lucky enough to get on promotion to come back to the armed robbery squad as the OC, the Detective Senior Sergeant in charge, having spent a few years there as a detective sergeant in charge of a crew. So I was kind of blessed as far as my career goals went.
Yes.
Because I really had no want or aim to become an officer. And I liked the operational side of the police force, and I maintained that until the day I resigned back in 2000.
And mate, I wish there was more blokes like you in the job, or even years ago, because you're a class act detective. You are, you know. I mean, you caught quite a few violent criminals, didn't you?
Well, certainly I was lucky enough to be in charge of a squad who were skilled detectives, and more importantly, had the same desire I did, and that was to, if necessary, work 24 hours a day to bring these felons to justice. Some of those investigations were very hard, protracted, and required a supreme dedication.
Yes.
Not just a glancing dedication, it required supreme effort. And some of the jobs were very intricate, to say the least, because we had to use the services of the undercover surveillance crews and SOG, and put together plans that was approved by the hierarchy and were deemed to be fairly safe in operation, in operational terms, and yet, of course, fulfil the result that we needed to achieve, and that is to catch crooks and put them in jail.
Yes, and viewers, I spent 10 years in the Victoria Police, and I was saying to Ray before, I had a taste of getting up at 4:30 in the morning and then doing a raid. You get the sledgehammer, break down the door, you've got the warrant, you're arresting the crooks. But in my time, it was for small drugs or maybe burglaries. But it's a different picture when it's a gang of armed robbers, isn't it?
Well, the armed robbery squad had a number of, I suppose, not so much goals, but mantles to which we operated by, and that was we were in charge of all bank robberies that occurred in the state, all attacks on armoured vehicles, that is armed payroll trucks, cash in transit vehicles, series of offences, and it could be a number of service stations, things of that like, which occurred all over Melbourne.
Yes.
So it was easier for us to coordinate an investigation and an operation. And we were also very proactive. We became a very proactive squad because it's not only a matter of being a reactive policeman, going to a scene of a crime, looking for clues, interrogating suspects and witnesses. We tried to get in front of the pack, and that is to proactively investigate criminals, their whereabouts, those they fraternise with, and once we recognised a form of behaviour or a pattern of behaviour, we would work on them 24 hours a day.
So you're still talking like a boss, aren't you?
Yes,
like a
unfortunate,
policeman.
isn't it? Yes.
Tell me, cut to the chase, the armed robber, the Russell Street bombings. Tell me
okay.
about that crook. Who was he and how did he get caught?
Russell Street bombers?
Yeah.
Well, I regard them as probably the most interesting bunch of criminals that I've ever had anything to do with.
Yep.
But I think they're probably the most interesting group of criminals that have ever infiltrated or operated in the state of Victoria.
Yes.
There's a fellow by the name of Stan Taylor who was doing time at the old Pentridge. And Stan Taylor had been asked by Ronald Ryan to escape with him. Stan Taylor considered that particular plan but knocked it back, and Peter Walker took over his place. But Stan Taylor, whilst he's in jail and with his many conversations, recruited, for want of a better word, entertained maybe another, some other younger criminals who were also doing time by the name of Peter Michael Reid, Rodney and Craig Minogue, and a fellow by the name of Paul Kurt Hetzel. And in essence, they became a little brotherhood, or a gang of brothers in jail. And once they all got out, they regrouped and began their spree of major and very violent armed robberies and sexual activity. And when I say sexual activity, sexual crimes. They were a group that stopped at nothing, and on the day they blew up Russell Street, they also robbed a bank at Doncaster and fired a shot at the bank manager. That was the nature of their violence.
Was that before Russell Street?
No, that was on the day of Russell Street bombing. Yeah. They blew up Russell Street, and what they intended to do was park the bomb car in the tunnel which allowed police vehicles into the little courtyard in the middle of the quadrangle at Russell Street.
That's right.
Because they thought that would have the most effect. And because there was always a guard on that little tunnel, they decided that the next best option would be to put it out the front of Russell Street, the front door itself. And as we know, as history now tells us, as we all know, that once the bomb was exploded, it severely injured a magistrate, killed policewoman Angela Taylor.
God bless her, yes.
Yes.
And it injured a magistrate as well, did it?
Yes, a fellow by the name of West was a magistrate.
Right.
I think he became chief magistrate, but nonetheless, he was severely injured, along with another policeman. And because mayhem, to say the least. And of course, we knew not, nor was it my role to know that. I was just a detective at Russell Street. And because the squads became involved, Operation Russell became the task force, which was headed by a group of detectives that were drawn from all over Melbourne. And they looked for the best detectives that they could get, started the Operation Russell task force, and coincidentally, about a month after that, they identified a fellow by the name of Peter Michael Reid.
And we might continue after the next break, but that's a very interesting story there, Ray. We'll be back very shortly with Ray Watson, former armed robbery squad boss. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a lovely Wednesday night, and thank you for joining us. I was saying before, there's some great coppers out there, but this guy here is a class act, one of the tough guys. Used to be in charge of the armed robbers. Were they based in St Kilda Road?
We were.
Yeah.
Yes, we were based in St Kilda Road, not far from the Shrine.
And Ray, to wrap up the Russell Street bombers, how did you catch them?
Well, it was not so much me. It was certainly the Operation Russell task force. Once we found out who was really behind the core of the gang, the job was then to find them. And of course, we located Stan Taylor and Craig Minogue and Rodney Minogue up near Donolly. And the SOG effected their arrest, and the operation people were up there, already up in that area that particular night when they were arrested, and we flew them, we chopped them up to Swan Hill.
Was anybody shot and killed during that raid?
Nobody was, no, that wasn't, that didn't happen. I did speak to Stan Taylor, interestingly enough, just before I left the police force. I went down to Laverton prison to speak to Stan Taylor, and a completely different matter. And I said, Stan, how are you? And he said, look, I'm not that flash. He said, I've just had open heart surgery. And she showed me the wound. And I said, oh, did that hurt? And he's always said, Not as much as when you blokes came through the front door up at Denali. He said that he had still a touch of humour about him, although it was a bit of black humour. But Stan Taylor was a very interesting fellow, how he recruited these group, because apart from Russell Street bombing, I charged him with 100 major criminal offences, for which he received another 20 years jail.
What happened at the end to them all? What was the outcome?
Well, Stan Taylor was found guilty of the Russell Street bombing and consequently murder, and received a life sentence without parole for that. And really, the 100-odd offences that I charged him with was about 20 armed robberies, major armed robberies, bank robberies, shooting with intent, you name it. Truly a hamburger with a lot, Stan got from me. But the reality
Which is a good thing.
Oh, not a bad thing. It's
Which
good
is
for
a
Stan.
good
Yeah, it's a
thing.
good thing that Stan's in jail and stays there.
Yes.
He's really got what he deserves.
Yes.
No compassion should be shown to Stan Taylor, in my humble opinion. But Stan's sentencing, he got another 20 years for these armed robberies on top of these life sentences. So in effect, it's really more like an academic exercise in some ways, but justice for the victims nonetheless.
Justice for the victims. You know, Ray, back
Most
in
important.
2004 when it was Cops and Lawyers, I had a ex-Special Operations Group member sit here, and he shot and killed 12 people, and I said, how did you feel about that? And he said, Michael, they deserved it. They were bad people who shot other people, and he was comfortable with that, whereas other people shoot in the line of duty and get stressed out and leave the force.
Most
now, you legally shot and killed Mark Militano, I understand.
Yes,
and,
a renowned bank robber.
Renowned bank robber. Can you explain the situation there, what happened?
Yes, on Christmas Eve 1986, I had been to a bank robbery in Clarendon Street, South Melbourne, which was committed by a girl by the name of Victoria Joy Solomon. And we subsequently arrested her and charged her. But that evening, I thought, that's good, that's over and done with. I'm on my way home. As I was driving home at around about 5 minutes to 5 on Christmas Eve, I got a call to say that the ANZ Bank in Racecourse Road, Kensington, well Flemington really, had been robbed.
Were you by yourself in the squad car?
I think it was myself and another detective, Mark Harris. So we because we didn't live that far from there, we went to the scene of the bank robbery and spent the next few hours there and investigated as we would a normal bank robbery. Had no idea who'd done it. One offender in, normal bank robbery, jumped over the counter. Staff and customers made to lie on the floor while the contents of the cash drawers were cleaned out. And I think in those days he got about $30,000, but not a bad Christmas Eve present. And really, the normal crime scene examination, as it often didn't reveal much, apart from we had some photographs from the bank security cameras. But again, that wasn't a great clue, except the fact that he was wearing a motorbike helmet and had attended the bank on a motorbike and escaped on a motorbike. Well, it wasn't long after that I got a phone call at the squad to say that the man you want for that bank robbery is Mark Militano. And sure enough, after a bit of snooping around, I found that this bloke did have a motorbike in the North Melbourne Commission Flats, and it was secreted up there. But it wasn't a matter of, because we really had no evidence.
No.
And as you would know, Michael, just as well as I, number one, if you want to do a raid on somebody, you've got to justify a warrant. And we may have been able to do that, although that would have been a bit clutching at straws. And of course, even if you've got a warrant, you search the premises, you've got to be able to find the proceeds of the bank robbery and clothing.
It's all about evidence, isn't
it? That's right, in essence, the evidence that you need to
So you went
charge.
there? You went there and had a look?
No, we didn't. No, I chose not to. We chose to, as we often did, conduct an operation. And we found out that Militano was frequenting a flat in Kensington, not far from North Melbourne. And what we did is we hired the flat next door. And that is, we rented the flat from the agent, and we had a deck chair and a coffee urn. And
a stakeout, like the movie Stakeout.
It was a stakeout, yes. And what we were trying to do is get a warrant to put a listening device in. And there's some legal problems with that. And so what we did of a night time, when we thought the coast was clear and it was fairly warm weather, it was early March, we would slither out of our flat and into the car park, get close to the open window to try to listen to what they were saying. And it was nerve-wracking stuff.
Yes.
Because we knew Militano was armed. We knew from the investigation upon him that he was a venomous snake.
While you were doing that investigation about the armed rob, did you hear about other jobs being planned?
Yes, we did. And that caused the second phase of the operation to be conducted with a special operations group, because we believed he was going to conduct a bank robbery this particular day over in the Footscray area. So we had the surveillance crew follow him. We watched him and his mate course around the Footscray area.
Yes.
And obviously paying attention to a couple of banks in particular around the Footscray market area. So we thought, look, today's his day where he will be captured and truly imprisoned for these charges that we'd been working on. And we knew, as I say again, we knew he was one of these fellows because, again, you would know that sometimes you get crooks in and they will talk to you day and night. And they were happy to speak about their sins. This fellow we knew from his antecedents was not one to be of that kind.
Yes.
So we had to catch him with his pants down, so to speak. So what happened that day was during the early afternoon, the dogs or the surveillance crew were on him. We believe that he saw that he burnt the surveillance team. And in other words, he discovered their presence.
Yes.
Because they were trying to not lose him, because to lose him was going to be that an armed hold-up could occur without us being part and party of it, certainly to the capture of the individual. And as it turned out, he did some manoeuvring and we lost him. And we actually had a crew meeting or a squad meeting with the SOG outside the Footscray football ground. I remember it quite clearly.
Yeah. And
that led us to send the dogs back to the Kensington, North Melbourne area to try and find him. And sure enough, find him they did in a used car lot.
Yes.
And he'd dropped off his co-offender at the flat at Kensington. I ordered the arrest of that fellow, and myself and a couple of other detectives were out in we were now in the Flemington area with Militano coursing around, and our view was to, once he was spotted, that the SOG would arrest him, and we would charge him with conspiracy or an attempt to commit armed robbery, whatever the case was likely to be.
What happened next?
Well, what happened next was simply that the SOG...
I think we just better go to break, but we'll get into the next very shortly. Don't go away, we'll be back very shortly with this amazing story. Welcome back to the show. We're sitting on the couch with Ray Watson, former armed robbery squad detective. We're just talking about, before the break, about a chap called Mark Militano who he tracked down for armed robberies, and he then got shot and killed during the final phase, did he?
Yes, unfortunately that did transpire that way. As I said before, that the Special Operations Group were, it was the plan that they would capture him and just hand them over, which often is the case. That's their job, that's our job. And I was with Detective Sergeant Rod Porter and a couple of other detectives.
Oh, I know Rod. He's a good man.
Yes, you would know Rod Porter.
And Marielle Lorenzi.
Yeah, indeed.
I think I might have got on perfect match with her. We won't talk about that. Perfect match in 1986.
But nonetheless, Rod Porter and I and our crews were in the back blocks of Kensington, very close to the Flemington racetrack.
Yes.
And we were waiting for what we believe the inevitable result to occur, when all of a sudden down the street we were parked in was this car driven by Militano. And I just said to Rod, look, we'll grab this bloke, we'll do a head-on intercept. And we pulled out of the curb and blocked his path with our cars. He raised a weapon in the car towards us. There were some shots fired by my detectives at the car, which virtually bounced off, and he exited from the car, and I found myself being the lead detective, that is, the detective running in front of the posse, and he turned around well, I suspect he was trying to shoot me because he had the gun raised at me, and I had the gun raised at him whilst we were running, which is the most, certainly the situation that you would most want to avoid, in other words, because it's dangerous to not only us but the passers-by and people who are living. It's a residential street. Nonetheless, I discharged my handgun, and it hit him, and he dropped to the ground and unfortunately died at the scene.
At the scene.
And I mean, we called the ambulance straight away.
It's karma, though, isn't it?
Well, whether it's karma or not, look, I don't take any pride in the fact that I've shot this fellow dead.
No, but it's part of the job, though, isn't it?
It's part of the job, and that's the way I saw it, and still do.
Yeah.
And you do go through, and I do empathise with policemen who have used their weapon, be it in self-defence or for whatever other reason, where a loss of life is ensued.
Sure.
Because it does play tricks on your brain a bit.
It does, and then there's always a lot of media criticism from all the other groups as well.
Well, certainly you find yourself on the front page of the Herald Sun the next day. It attracted a lot of media attention. And of course, you wonder if you've done the right thing. You examine your conscience to see, could I have done this some other way? Will I be charged? What will the police force do? Who knows? Because the workings of the police force are strange, to say the least, sometimes.
Well, that's right. As we were saying before, there was 10 detectives suspended for murder a couple of 15 years ago.
Yes.
And, well, those detectives would have been quite concerned. But that was part of the job, Ray, wasn't it?
It was part of the job, and I survived the ordeal, and I felt sorry for his family.
Yeah.
Actually, I still do. I mean, I chose to give evidence at the coroner's court.
Yes.
I was happy to make a statement to the homicide squad. I felt that the story needed to be told, despite criticism, whatever the case may be, but that was the choice I made.
Yes.
And some people thought it may have been a bit naive, but, bugger the naivety. There's sometimes when I've always said a man's got to stand up and be counted. That's
exactly right, viewers. A man's got to stand up and be counted. You can't be a walkover. But 28 years in the Victoria Police, ladies and gentlemen, he's done a great job for Victoria. And he says the best day was when he joined the police force, and the happiest days when you left as well.
The two happiest days of my career was the day I joined and the day I resigned. Yes.
That's right. And mate, we'll have to have you on again. There's so many stories to share.
More than happy, Mark.
Tell me about all that experience. You're now doing a speaking circuit with some of your ex-copper mates?
Yes, and others.
And others. There's a barrister as well?
Yes, there's a very well-known barrister involved. But what it came about is because each one of us had been asked to speak at various functions and for various reasons, schools and the like, corporate functions, and just, and certainly in my case, blue ribbon functions.
Yes.
To raise money for the Blue Ribbon Foundation. And it crossed my mind, I thought, look, maybe there's a way I can pool these resources and provide a service to those who might be wish to be either entertained or in some regards educated. And the education part of it was, and I've always thought about this in the lines of when you've got those maturing and matriculating,
teach the young people to stay away from a life of crime, and even some of the older ones.
Even their poor behaviour when it comes to the end of the year functions, because sometimes they get carried away, they don't realise the consequences of their actions and what those consequences can lead to, certainly criminal charges, and maybe a professional life may be thwarted by the fact that they've been charged and receive a criminal conviction.
Mate, and you certainly have the life experience to talk to these people. If they want to book the Great Man and the boys, and tell me who's on the team.
Okay, there's
we've got to wrap up quickly.
A very well-known homicide detective, Charlie Bazzina.
Yes.
Who's a bit of a legend in the police force and now out. A fellow by the name of Richard Maidment, Special Counsel, who's a senior prosecutor for the Commonwealth of Australia.
Yes.
And there's also, we have the ability to use other people that we think may be suitable for a particular...
How can they book you, Ray? Because we're running out of time.
Best way to contact us is on the net, sentinelspeakers.com.au. That's Sentinel Speakers,
Thank you very much, and we'll put it on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. What an amazing story. We'll have Ray back again. Love and best wishes. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you next week. Good night.